Hello there, I'm Acting Crimes, or Air, if you prefer.
I'm Ember's Tide.
I just have one name, and it's Jerica.
And I'm your DM, Jay. And this is Insight Check, where we delve into the dungeon of your bad decisions and retrieve the treasure of wisdom. You know, we just had a supermoon, a very rare supermoon, and the unnatural forces are just all over. I think it's time...
Do supermoons make super werewolves?
They do. It's exactly like Super Saiyans. The hair gets longer.
Golden!
Yeah, exactly. They lose their eyebrows for some reason.
I'm going to stop this DBZ talk right now.
Can we shift into some Sailor Moon talk for a quick hot second?
No, actually, we're gonna do dungeon crawl.
So I wanted...
Is it Matt Colville?
No, it's not Matt
Is it his
Colville.
Kickstarter?
No, it's not his Kickstarter. That's a good thing, though, and you should check that out, too. But I wanted to
absolutely
press a free tool for all of those who are out there home brewing. Making your own awesome Dungeons and Dragons content. And if you've always thought, man, I wish I could make this look like all the cool books that they put out for 5e, Monster Manual, Player's Handbook and stuff, you can. Homebrewery.naturalcrit.com is a tool where you can, in Markdown, which is a simplified markup language, they have a little online editor, and you can actually create all of the elements, text boxes, all the titles and headings. It's already 2-column layout, much like all of the Dungeons & Dragons printed products, and it makes it look super professional and super cool. I've been kind of refining my one-shot that I've been running for some of the folks in the Shadow Council fandom and working it into that so I'd have a nice, clean, cool-looking thing that I could then circulate to other people in case they wanted to run it. And I know that Jay has been using it for neat stuff as well.
I don't know. Sounds like some nerd shit to me.
It is.
The beauty of it is if someone sees you in like a coffee shop or a public place, you could be like, "What? This is my tech startup that I'm coding for."
Yes, Homebrewery is pretty cool. I've been dabbling with it as well. It's an excellent tool for organizing your thoughts in a coherent way and making them look visually appealing without knowing anything or doing. So it's nice.
I feel cheapened because I'm pretty good with my hypertext markup language that I do on my own.
I don't know what markup or markdown means.
Make pretty.
Yes, this is good and I like it. How it does the make pretty for me. Yeah, absolutely. It's a great tool. I absolutely 100% endorse it. I think that everybody should be using this incredible tool in order to organize their thoughts and their campaign ideas and their monsters and NPCs and things like that. It's just a great way to take notes and to really make things look really nice and presentable when you're giving it to your players. Because if I were to present my campaign notes to my players, they would have to flip through at least 30 pages of random doodles. And it's a mess. It's just an absolutely unusable mess.
Character doodles? Because your character doodles are probably the cutest character doodles I've ever seen.
This is very true.
I appreciate these kind lies you're telling me.
You don't know me. You don't know my life.
I absolutely have enjoyed it, and it's given me a real sense of accomplishment to actually put some of my world down in a way that feels official and neat and organized, something I can share with people with pride, and have been constantly all the time.
It's very pretty. As a consumer of these labors, I like it
I agree.
a lot.
I think that one of the nice things about these kinds of platforms, and I've played a tiny bit with this one since you guys turned me onto it, but having those constraints forces you to think through the chaos of the story you're trying to tell and start to, Jay, like you were saying, like, give it some order, give it some structure, bring it into a template, forces you to think about the levers of the story and the world state. It's kind of nice. And this is a really nice one, too. I like this one a lot.
Jerica!
I'm super excited as a self-identified cisgendered female person that Kate Welch is now employed at WotC.
Yay, Kate!
That is my gush.
Oh yeah, Kate Welch, you the best!
Woo!
We are very excited to see what she brings to the game.
Definitely. And like she keeps mentioning like working on a
Yes.
book, and I'm like, When will then be now?
Let's hope she doesn't
Well,
welch
judging
on
from-
that promise.
Oh!
Defo won't. I'll fight you.
You can't kill me. These puns keep me alive.
Perkins at one point said he was working 2 years ahead of their product release date. So I don't know if they're still keeping that pace now or whatnot, but
This sounds like a humble brag to me.
Oh,
possibly.
Listen, Mordenkainen was included in Curse of Strahd. Like they're definitely doing some foresight on some of this stuff. But I
Yeah.
think that maybe the book she'll be assigned to is probably something they've already had planned, and then she'll just be sort of assigned to, I don't know how WotC works.
We'll have to wait and see.
I did see a tweet from her where it was just a video of, I think, her living room. Dogs are around. She's just on the couch, and she's just covered wall to wall with D&D books. So she's putting in the research and getting ready to write up a storm, I'm sure.
Hey, Embers, how do you feel about dungeons?
How do you feel about
Well,
dungeons?
I was just gonna say, at least from the Magic the Gathering card world, I know that they work on world development, at least 1 year, if not 2 years in advance. They have this awkward podcast where they talk about stuff in a 3 to 6 month lag, and then they have a 2 to 3 month lag delaying the release of the podcast. So when you listen to it, you completely lose all concept of time altogether, which is great on your drive to work because your commutes feel shorter.
An exciting plus.
Yeah, but I mean, WotC has such machinations, I'm sure. I just really, really am excited to see what Kate puts out, and the projects she's a part of and the teams that she works with. One of the nicest things about this community is, the people of WotC, the people of D&D are, I'd say, very respectfully and appropriately public on social media. So Kate is now a part of a good crew, and I feel like the interactions that the average fan gets on social media platforms are a great way to connect when there might not be major content released every couple of months. It might be a 6-month kind of wait sometimes, but you still feel connected to those groups. So I'm very happy about that.
Last month, we learned of the wonderful book Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, or Tomb of Toes. It depends.
Or Foamy Toes.
Foamy toes.
We inter the toes only here.
Morty Cordy's Foam of Toes.
Yeah.
It's all right. First of
Sounds
all,
like a fungus of some sort.
I would like to personally call out Haley.
She ain't here.
Because last time I said Mordenkainen, and she said, actually, it's Mordenkainen. And Chris Perkins, in the lore you should know about Mordenkainen, said it can be Mordenkainen or Mordenkainen. Both are correct. Ooh. Oh.
To be
Take that, Haley.
continued.
You're great. Yes, so we learned about Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, and I thought it might be interesting to visit some possible contenders for the title of entry into Tome of Foes. I thought it might be really good to see get my fingers on the beating pulse of the D&D underground. Really see what those homebrewers are cooking up and see what they're thirsty for. Here's a few options that could be in that book.
That was a lot of really weird metaphors. Air, I think he's turning into a werewolf.
Ow.
That was adorable.
That was adorable.
So, you read the Tarask entry, right? Mm-hmm. And you think, too easy, too weak,
Yeah.
pathetic. So Ultima Tarask is a thing on D&D Beyond. It has a page entry that I can only describe as monolithic. It is very large. It can do a lot of things. It's a siege monster. It has a reflective carapace, which means that it can just bounce those spells right back at you. I think that would be a good one. I think a harder Tarask is what everybody's hungry for, right?
Yeah, challenge rating is only 30, so...
Challenge rating on the Ultima Tarask is also 30, because 30 is the highest it goes.
Well, there's your problem.
Now, I was looking through these homebrew monsters. I thought I found something kind of interesting in a 4-headed Hydra, like a weakened Hydra.
A weekend Hydra? Is that like He's got his Hawaiian shirt on and his sandals.
Absolutely. So I thought, okay, a 4-headed Hydra, that's cool. And then the next one I saw was a 13-headed Hydra. And then I got a really strange premonition, like the voice of some sort of divine figure spoke to me, and I thought, I'm going to click on this guy's custom monsters. And he had statted up every variant of Hydra from 4 heads to 13 heads.
Oh my.
He had made a monster entry for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 13-headed Hydra. A Hydra for every occasion.
I never have to wear the same Hydra twice.
So there's this thing with the monster manual, which I think is really cool, and that is that they will put sort of like families of monsters together, so you can kind of see what some important variations might look like. And I could see, maybe Tarrasque and Ultima Tarrasque as a variant
Absolutely.
Stat block, but I don't think they're going to do
Ultima Weapon Tarrasque.
9 different kinds of Hydra.
The Sylvan Spaniel, which I think is just a great idea.
What?
It's literally just a Fey Spaniel, Cocker Spaniel, but Fey.
Oh, it's like a Tressium, but the Canid variety.
Some of these I think are entirely based around the pun in their name, such as the Slaymate, a small childlike monster that will play games and also slay you.
I feel like maybe they're gonna rename that one if they put it in. What's the CR rating on that?
That one's actually 4.
That's not gonna make it in.
While we're in the topic of Hydras, how about the Ancient Red Hyddragon? A 5-headed Ancient Red Dragon. Hyddragon. It's a great wordplay, but I don't necessarily think that we need a CR30 Ancient Red Dragon with 5 heads. We already have that. It's called Tiamat.
I'm sorry, it's called
Tiamat.
K.
Sure.
What?
I heard Tiamat, and I was like, have I been pronouncing it wrong?
I said
the whole time?
Tiamat. I said Tiamat the first time. Thank you for calling me on it.
No, I thought I was
No,
wrong.
it's okay. How about an achromatic dragon? It's a challenge rating 13, but listen to its breath weapon and tell me if you think it's a challenge rating 13. It breathes on you. You have to make a DC 19 saving throw, or you are instantly teleported to another plane of existence.
But what color is it?
It's achromatic. None.
But what does that mean to my human
It's
eyes?
completely translucent.
This creature has a narrow head with 2 spine-like fins rising from above the eyes, with 2 horns curled back on each side and a 3rd horn in the middle curling forward. The spine fins roll down the neck and back, branching to connect its wings and tails. The creature is a being of pure chaos and utterly
So it's
confusing.
Discord from My Little Pony.
It very well might be.
I like it, but I have to say, sometimes being transferred to another plane of existence, that could be a plus.
That's really hard to get back from. It seems like if that happened to your barbarian, you might have a real problem getting back. Especially because, like, Elysium is on the list of planes it can take you to. Like,
Right.
all these really, really out there planes. Actual Cannibal is another one that's out here. I mean, it seems pretty self-explanatory. It's just it's an actual cannibal.
What about something like Malar's beasts?
A Beast of
the Beast of
Malar?
Malar.
Malar? Do you think
Yeah.
that might be?
Where did you hear about such a strange and exotic
I
beast?
mean, I just pulled it out of my bottom, but that's okay.
You must have a very creative dungeon master to
I
have pulled up
must,
such
right?
such an interesting and storied beast of legend.
And what about like that lion with 5 feet for arms?
Yeah, all the way around its
That's
body.
definitely gonna make it in.
Now, here's one that I think harkens back to a different time of Dungeons and Dragons, and this is the
Howler
last
Wasp?
one I'll do today. No, this one is an adolescent arcane slime.
Aw.
Now, what makes me think of this? First of all, a teenager slime just trying to learn magic. Come on, who can relate? But what really interested me about this creature is its ability, corrode magic. Any magical weapon that hits this arcane slime corrodes. After dealing damage, the weapon takes a permanent and cumulative -1 penalty to damage rolls. If its penalty drops to -5, the weapon is destroyed. It's asshole DMing! Back for its glorious return!
Yeah, seriously. This is just what you bring around the corner when you need to inflict some punishment on your crew.
Yeah, when you're sick of being a good DM, you can be this kind of DM.
It's always there, just angsty and goopy and waiting to come off the bench.
That being said, I really would recommend D&D Beyond beyond for your monster hunting needs. There were so many really cool and interesting beasts that people had made and submitted. While I was looking for this list of silly little creatures to bring up, I was really in shock by how many utterly fantastic ideas people had put up here. It's a great resource. D&D Beyond has many uses, but homebrew magic items, homebrew monsters, these are things that you can exploit other people's work and effort for your own gain. They have put these things up here free of charge, wanting nothing more than your eyeballs to fall upon their hard work.
I'd like to talk about the Laraken. Laraken. It is an ooze monster. And it's from that place called Halrua that I can't get enough of. Yes, it's a magic absorbing creature from the plane of Nishrek, home of the Orc pantheon, that hates all other living things and attacks any that approach. It is a magic drainer. It appears as a glistening yellow sphere with 2 long tentacles protruding from opposite sides of its fleshy body.
That's a good one. I know we've dug into the deep past of D&D monsters. I am currently looking at the Stench Cow. Stench space KOW. The first stat it has, which I find great, is frequency, common. Then in brackets, Hell's only. So it's very common
But only in the
to hell. Yeah, to hell. And it is just a disgusting, smelly hell cow. That's its whole thing. That's what it does.
A lot of monsters in early editions were just a word and then a thing. You just sort of jam just a random word to any sort of thing, and now it's a monster. So it's like, oh man, I need a really good D&D monster. I'm looking around my house, I see a cat, I see it's on a bag.
Like in the very early days of D&D, you didn't have as much sci-fi fantasy stuff to pull from like you do now, because you need a sort of like a common workspace and a common, language to talk to your people about, right? So like alicorns or something like that.
That was actually a statted monster I found.
Yeah.
In D&D Beyond.
I found a great site that's just got nothing but ridiculous ancient D&D monsters. I'm looking at the cushion fungus, which is basically an enormous beanbag-looking gourd almost. It looks like some sort of like enormous floofy squash, and its whole thing was like, adventurers get tired in dungeons. Wouldn't it be nice to just lay your head down on this big cushy plant, and then as you sleep, it absorbs and devours you.
No mess.
No muss, no fuss. And it like the picture I'm looking at, we'll have to make sure we link this, is this happily snoozing adventurer is just being enveloped in moosh.
Nice. Now, do you think this was like Gygax's team sort of trying to play test things that their adventuring groups would do and try to find ways to kill them? Or was this just a really hyper, I guess I'd say hyper resourceful, or maybe just hyper vengeful DM who's like, okay, what you want to do? You go to sleep, it eats you. Your pillow's a mouth.
Yeah.
I feel like early D&D was more like dungeon heavy.
Yeah.
So the more fun and exciting and different things you could have in your dungeon, the better. So I could definitely see how this could be, like this cushion fungus could be a new take on the same dungeon or something like that.
It was also very adversarial.
Yes.
I wanna see the DM being like, you come into an empty room, save for 4 large, very cushiony looking plants. What do you do? No, the door is locked. Maybe you should take
It's
a
also
rest.
nighttime.
Yeah,
And you drank some milk.
You're out of spells. Maybe you should sleep.
There's a table with some chocolate
Right,
milk
right.
on it.
Yeah.
You see,
Maybe you should rest your head on the
right,
plant.
you see a well-appointed vanity with a toothbrush.
I actually did that to my players once. I completely misjudged how bad the Funhouse dungeon I was running them through was.
Oh, no.
So I thought they would only need a short rest by the time they got through the first half of it. And the wizard who ran the place that they had finished talking to after the halfway point on their way out was like, so you've gotten this far, here's some meds! Poof! and just gave them beds in the middle of the dungeon because they would have never made it out otherwise.
Sometimes you stumble upon a long-forgotten Mordenkainen's permanent house.
Mordenkainen's fluffy down comforter.
Can I ask you gentlemen a question?
Yeah.
Please.
What has your toughest monster battle been?
Run or played?
Both.
Oh.
So the toughest one I've played was one of the first ones I played when I was a wee one. My party and I were essentially trapped by a tribe of Sahuagin, if that's how you pronounce it.
Swahwahuigan.
Oh,
Sahuagins.
Sahuagins. What a strange coincidence.
They just appeared in our game.
Oh, okay, so if somehow your DM and I are actually somehow mind melded across time and space, which is probably what's happening.
That seems Occam's razor, of
Right.
course.
I couldn't think of any other options, so this must be the right one.
That's not how Occam's razor works.
Not a single entity beyond necessity there, yeah.
The Sahuagin basically chased my party and I towards their egg bed or their hive because they were hatching a brood, and the brood hatched hungry. So they wanted to have live snackins for the babes. And ultimately, it wound up being kind of like a 2D platforming video game as we were trying to essentially duck through traps that they had laid, in this marshland kind of dungeon. This was very dungeon-oriented campaign. It was just like crawling, and this was the fastest paced adventure battle sequence I'd ever done or played at that time, and I just felt like I was missing every opportunity to get a head start on these things, and they did feast on our brains, so we didn't come out ahead.
No.
But I learned a lot, and isn't that a victory in and of itself?
And you had fun
I did,
dying.
actually.
And isn't
I
that
did.
really all that matters?
Hey, and then I rolled a new character that night, and it's actually a pretty good one. So that was the toughest monster battle. So tough, it was that character's last monster battle.
One of the toughest battles I have ever been in was the Castle Naryatar situation in the Cult of the Dragon arc thing. Storyline, and it was so involved because there were a lot of moving parts. So there were like cultists over here and bullywogs over here and lizard men, which weren't our enemy, luckily, over here. And then we had the red wizard over here and his, what were they? They were not dragons, they were blue
Guard drakes?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep, guard drakes. We started with what has come to be known as the Red Breakfast, where our sorcerer at breakfast vaporized most of the cultists. And then the slog began. And not the slod, the slog. So the most interesting part about this battle that set it apart from the other ones is that we actually got to prepare defenses against the bullywogs, which was different than most of our other battles where whoops, oh, now we're fighting. Okay, cool. But we got to actually set traps and things like that. So that was interesting. The Red Wizard still got away. I assume that in most cases he does, but whatever, it's fine.
So I'll go for having run. So I had mentioned just before we started recording that in said Funhouse dungeon, just mentioned a moment ago, right before they got to the wizard whose spirit was embodied in this place, there was a young black dragon. And I remember the first time I had the line of acid breath weapon hit one of them and rolled really, really well. The player's response was, if you wanted to stop playing, you could have just said so.
That's always a really good way to start.
So yeah, they did eventually defeat it, but that was probably the toughest thing I've ever run. It did run them right to the brink, which I didn't realize it would, which is why I let them have that good long rest. In terms of fighting, I think the thing I've been most worried about was the one we always come back to, the aboleth you threw at us.
Wow, I made the list. I'm so excited. But baby, you just ain't seen nothing yet.
Fuck me.
You ain't seen nothing yet. The hardest encounter I've ever run is going to sound very cruel. In my longest running campaign, my heroes ran a very long time against a pirate called Vanderosa. Crimson Vanderosa. He was a pirate who was organizing the pirates of the world under his heel. He was controlling the seas, and via control of the seas, he controlled the trade. And so they spent months, they gathered resources, they gathered allies, they journeyed across the lands, they got their asses kicked, so they started over, they ended up enslaved. They broke out of prison. It was a long journey. They found this temple. They got holy artifacts. It was crazy. They went on this huge journey. Finally, rose to Vanderosa. They found him in a open field. They rushed out. They fought him. They had this pitched conflict. Managed to defeat him. He turns to them. He turns to snow and melts. Because he was a simulacrum.
Yes, what a jerk.
And then 15 pirates burst up out of the bushes and fire on them in quick sequence. And then my best friend at the time joined the channel to play an NPC villain for me. And I played Vanderosa, and he played Vanderosa's lieutenant, a Naga, who became known as the evil Naga bastard for the rest of the season, because they didn't know its real name, because of course it's not going to give its true name. And the evil Naga bastard was way more cruel than I expected, and very efficient. And it was a long, pitched battle. It kept going back and forth, and I, honest to God, had to send a message through text message to my friend and be like, dude, take it easy. Like, you're going to murder them all. Because the evil Naga bastard was a true bastard. And it eventually came down to a save or die situation where evil Naga bastard pointed to a person and cast disintegrate on them. And that person either saved or they would have been permanently dead. And they saved, so they didn't permanently die. And it was very, very difficult. The entire fight was super hard. They championed through it. There was one part where the ranger kept hiding under a bridge after every attack, and the evil Naga bastard would roll perception to try and find them and waste their action every round just trying to isolate this person, and they got very mad about it. But it wasted 2 rounds of the evil Naga bastard's turns, which was probably the only thing that saves the party. It was intense. It was the most intense battle I've ever played. Letting another human being control one of the enemies was so surprisingly effective for ramping up the tension, because when you're 1DM and you're controlling 15 different moving parts, you forget abilities. But when you give one person complete control over a full caster, then you have just created a very big problem for your players.
Wow.
Especially when you give that caster Naga HP and Naga armor.
Here's another question for you, Jay.
Mm-hmm.
What is the most ingenious monster kill that one of your players has gotten?
Casting water walk on the aboleth.
Ah!
I love
made
that.
That was all Haley, I believe.
That was all Haley.
Yep.
I love that. Even now, I just stop and think about, God damn, these guys are good.
What about you, Air? What have you seen?
So my favorite clever way my players dealt with an enemy. So it wasn't an impressive monster. It was just a knight. But he was the captain of the guard in the dungeon they had been abducted to and were escaping out of. And so I set up this situation where they catch him in the privy. And, he's at their mercy. He gives them the key, the skeleton key. They need to move the rest of the way through the dungeon, and makes a deal with them. Lock me in here. I won't make any trouble for you. And I knew that he actually had a secret exit out of the privy, so he could come back right towards the end of the dungeon before they were going to face the last boss. And I'm like, this is going to be great. He's going to come out swinging his greatsword, blah, blah, blah. Except while making the deal, my players were like, strip completely naked. And they took all of his armor, all of his weapons. But I still didn't want to miss the cool, secret wall drops down and he comes out. So he runs out stark naked and just starts punching them. And he did not last very long, but it was just why would you idiots possibly want him to... Yeah, fine, okay. Yeah, he gives you his helmet. He gives you his cod piece. Like, and they took it all, and they added it to their inventory. They were very happy to have these random scraps of armor.
Probably my favorite kill that I've ever gotten was on a red wizard in some, I believe, lizard folk catacombs under a pyramid. And we were fighting probably 6 or so enemies, and we were focusing on the wizard because he's the caster. And Draika summoned 8 bobcats. And they were all pretty toasty pretty quickly, except this one bobcat that just kept hanging on. And at the end, like towards the end of the fight, this bobcat, and I named them all. I went around and asked my party to name all of them, and it was silly things like hot dog and happiness, but this one was Joy for a reason. And so Joy decided to run up the back of our tiefling sorcerer and scratch the red wizard in the face and coup de grace him. So for the most of the rest of the next 5 levels or so, Draika spent her time getting Joy back as a familiar instead of just a summon.
That's awesome. See, I like that your barbarian is currently like breeding dogs, and I was like, oh, I think there's some like druid, love lore, and I get the sense that just having herds of animals was like a core D&D thing, and you want it back, and I find that endearing.
I don't think you're wrong. I don't know if Banna was expecting the dogs to reproduce.
I don't think she's opposed to them doing
so
such.
She's dealing with this newfound situation,
Litter.
but that's okay.
So, y'all,
Double
I have a
entendre.
question for you.
Yeah.
So, speaking of PCs, right? Like, every so often you get new playables. I played a Tortle for the first time not long ago. Is there any species of monster that you kind of are most itching to play
Dryad.
as a playable?
Whoa.
Yeah.
Intriguing.
That
comes to mind right away. But it's a very good question because there's definitely some that I think are really cool. And you know where this Dryad thing comes from? It comes from Acquisitions Incorporated.
Danielle?
Where it was the shifting room one where they had to fight out of their intern masher, I believe. And one of the rooms, there was a Dryad that was seducing Viari.
Yeah, he had his 7 minutes in heaven with the Dryads.
Yes, and I'm like, Dryads are kick-ass.
What class would you pair with a Dryad, Draika?
Have you met me?
A Druid Dryad?
Uh-huh.
A Dryad Druid?
Yep.
Druid
that would
Dryad
be choice
Druid?
number 1. Or, that nature cleric thing looks pretty cute. Or you could
Pretty
go...
cute.
It's whatever.
Haley,
but-
avert your ears.
Or you could go, like, completely... I mean, Bard kind of makes a lot of sense, because, like, maybe it's, like, a Siren Dryad or something.
Yeah.
But you could maybe, like, Wizard. Like, that would be funny to me. Like a fire-based, like, a Pyro Wizard, where, like, she has issues with fire.
I would love if
'Cause she's
someone's
made
like,
of wood.
do you know the web spell? She's like, what? Just because I'm a Dryad, I need to know the web spell? Like, you know what?
Yep.
Yeah, just like, hey, here's your web spell, fireball.
Yeah.
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah.
Well, the other reason I ask is because every so often, WotC will do that, or homebrewers will do that, or the DMs Guild will do that. There's such rich content there. It'll never run dry.
Because I was going to say, when Xanathars came out, a lot of the more, like, monstrous races were kind of reflected in there. And there were some interesting ones, things that I didn't know about these races. Like, everyone knows kind of orcs are honor-bound warrior society, grumsh, and all the lore around that. but like I didn't actually know a lot about lizard folk or a lot about Yuan Ti, or I was actually really interested in goblins. I would kind of want to play a goblin because they're always just fodder for
Because
early
of
level.
Critical Role, right?
Yeah, let's be
There's a
real.
little
Because of
bit-
Sam Riegel.
There's a little bit about Critical Role, but that's the interesting thing. Goblins are not naturally led towards the arcane arts. So the whole idea of spoilers. Okay, one of the characters.
I
on
love it. I
Critical-
love it how everybody says spoilers and then there's a pause, a moment of silence. But sorry.
You need to give them time to hit that pause button, decimate that pause button. Anyway, it's our podcast. That happened a while ago. So yeah, one of the characters is a wizard and is pals with a goblin, and that goblin has recently gone arcane trickster under the guise of learning magic from their friend. So I thought that was a really neat idea. But yeah, like it talks about in Xanathar's about how in goblin society they have like a singular term for magic and magic users, and every sort of magic user is lumped under this same category. I'm trying to remember the term now.
Even like sorcerers and wizards would be the same.
Sorcerers,
thing.
and they even have descriptions of how a goblin might have started down this path. Like they might have found a spell book and managed to like create like the rudimentary actions and happen to have the objects to cast a spell. And there's actually like goblin racial traits you can have if you're rolling like a goblin wizard or goblin sorcerer for how they possibly came upon this, because it's such a rarity in their society.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very, very
That's
interesting.
that backstory I crave.
What about you, Jay? If you were to roll up a monstrous PC, what would you take?
If I was to play a monstrous race of the currently available or currently unavailable variety, I think I would probably be inclined towards something like a bugbear or a hobgoblin. I like the idea of these sort of smarter monstrous races that are generally used as villains. I think that there's an interesting angle there in being this ostracized outsider. It really confuses the morality of D&D when you play a monster race, though, because suddenly you have to, like, you are literally forced to be like, hey, wait, if I'm a monster, then does that mean all the other monsters have rich inner lives like me? And it becomes very confusing. It can be very morally ambiguous when you start playing monsters. Like when you're a goblin and you're a character and you're like a fully fleshed out 3-dimensional individual, and then you just like have to realize, hey, wait a minute, are all these goblins, are they people?
I want to know that feeling of Sondor other goblins feel while murdering goblins at first level. Where are you from? Stab.
I'm a goblin and I feel grief. Does this mean that all goblins have hearts? I'm confused about monster slaying now. So yeah, monstrous races can definitely be confusing. All right, guys, we have a question submitted today from the Insight Check Discord. This one is submitted by user Jaraika, Bana,
etc., et al.
When you said at the start you only have one name, I was like, liar!
Right,
You
yeah,
have the most
yeah,
names
yeah.
of anyone. Hi, Insight Check. That's not how it begins.
I don't know.
What do
Long-time
you-
listener.
Do you want me to read it?
No, that's too confusing. What do you use to run mobs on the side of the screen? Tables? Spreadsheets? How is it organized to run combat? I need to know. Also, Jay is a great DM.
That was the subtext implied by the capital letters.
Absolutely. That last part wasn't in there.
But it was in my heart.
There you go. What do you use, Air?
Well, considering I run pretty much entirely online, the behind the screen for me is easy because I have all the characters set up in their own category, all the enemies, all the baddies, and really you can just, if I'm using a map, I drop a bunch of them on there and can track their HP independently, can roll attacks or whatnot out of their list of actions, because the actual in Roll20, it actually looks like the stat block from the monster manual or what have you. So the one thing that I've been doing a lot more of is running one hit point baddies Help me, Jay, please.
Minions.
Minions, thank you.
4th edition style.
4th edition style. So I'm taking a lot of the lower level baddies and throwing a lot of them at parties, giving them a decent enough AC so that they can last a round or so, having a good number of them, and then having one big baddie that has an ability that helps key off something they can do. So I'll normally throw, like, in the most recent game I've been running, I had a whole bunch of just basic guards, like a 16 AC, a shield, and a spear. But I also had a knight leading them up his hit points, and he has the leadership ability, so they can add D4s to attack rolls and stuff to help them get in a few more digs on the party. But yeah, minions are great because one hit and they're done, and you don't have to track any HP for them. It keeps things nice and simple.
And another good thing about Roll20 and using your monsters through there is that you can actually pop out the windows and put them into your side screen, so that way you can keep your screen real estate. Because real estate on Roll20 can be very premium. It gets quickly very crowded. So you can just pop out your monster screens, drag them over to your side monitor, and then roll from there. And it'll actually populate into the game still, even though it's not in the same
You are so
window.
blessed with multiple monitors set up.
I am so blessed, because otherwise I couldn't run D&D every week.
It is fair.
It would be very difficult. But yeah, I do very similar. I run most of my stuff off of Roll20. I've gotten pretty good at manipulating that. When I don't run off of Roll20, I can quickly, if I have to create an encounter on the fly, which happens frequently, I can pull them up on D&D Beyond, which is my go-to resource for easy-to-find monsters. And other than that, I have a tab on my Chrome, which is a folder just entirely filled with monsters sorted by category, type, and location that I keep handy just in case I need to throw in an extra low-level monster or come up with a random encounter on the fly. Interesting monsters that I found as I peruse the internet, and I save them, especially ones that are homebrew or custom, because I like to throw in things that players have never seen before, because it's always going to keep people more engaged that way. So if I see something really interesting online, I will just save it to that folder, and then I have, an Arctic encounter, I have a forest encounter, I have a sea encounter chart, and I just, or not chart, but like tabs, and I just pop into those and throw one out, and then I have it to roll with on the fly, pop it into my side monitor, and keep rolling. For monsters like that, I'll just take the page and then pop it out into its own little page and keep it on my side monitor. And then roll with my physical dice.
Okay, and like for tracking hit points, are you just keeping it in your head, or what?
No, that I'll do I'll just drop a token on Roll20 and I'll put the hit points into the little bubbles over the token. So the blue and the green bubble, I'll put armor class, I'll put hit points, and then in the green bubble for monsters, I usually put charges for their special abilities that they often have. If like it's a dragon and they have to recharge their fire breath, I'll put a 1 or a 0 in there. 1 means they have it, 0 means they don't, and then I'll roll every round. It helps me remember to recharge those kinds of abilities.
Gotcha. When was the last time you made up an encounter on the fly for the F list?
Remember when you guys chased that guy across the sea and got onto the ship and it was flying away?
Yeah.
I had to quickly pull up the statistics for a bardic caster from Volo's Guide to Monsters.
Gotcha.
Ooh, I want to look that up.
What's that now?
Oh, I want to look that up. I didn't realize Volo had like analogs for classes. That's
Yeah,
super
absolutely.
Cool.
They have
Really
stat
helpful.
blocks at the very end of Volo's. They have stat blocks for basically every type of wizard, a decent level cleric, a very high level fighter, and then a medium level fighter, and then a bard and a ranger.
Oh, cool.
So you can get class analogs on the fly that have the little monster blocks instead of having to know all their abilities. More commonly, when I'm planning encounters on the fly, it's for my Cholt game, because they are jungle delvers. They're journeying through this jungle, so I'm constantly having to create encounters for them or change things up a bit for them on the fly. But for our game, it's usually a little more planned, mainly because if there's going to be a fight, I generally know who you're going to get a fight with in our game. Whereas when you're wandering through the jungle, it's kind of hard to know. Maybe a Tyrannosaurus will come up. Maybe you'll bypass the Tyrannosaurus. So I don't like to get too married to any of my plans in Cholt.
Yeah.
Before the month rolls to a close, last warning, it is February. So hashtag the nearly unpronounceable but much easier to write February with your fanfics, poetry, rhymes, artwork, all featuring the lovable Fen from Team Naiad on Acquisitions Incorporated C-Team.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to yet another episode of Insight Check. If you enjoyed this episode, check out the previous episodes and maybe leave us a little 5-star review on iTunes. It helps us out immensely. We'd, of course, like to thank Vince Flept for our awesome theme music, Never Stand Alone, and the incomparable Amy T. Falcone for our cute chibi faces that adorn our Twitter account and our Podbean site.
Answering your cues from our collective A's.
This
Was...
Insight.
Check.
Oh, she did it the way again. This
has been...
You're fucking with the brand.
Do it right.
Sorry. What line?
Was.
Aye.